Throughout my filming journey, a big proportion of the work that I've done has been done as a solo filmmaker. Throughout those years, there's some key essential things that I've learned and improved on that have allowed me to improve and grow as a solo filmmaker. So in today's video, I want to share 5 tips with you that will improve you as a solo filmmaker. Planning and pre-production are massively important if you're going to be a solo filmmaker. Even when I'm doing run and gun work, there is a strong element of planning that goes into that. As often I'm going to be working on my own, it's essential that I know exactly what I'm going into when I'm about to start a filming project. This will allow me to be able to work efficiently and make the best use of the time that's given to me. When you're working as a solo filmmaker, you're wearing multiple hats. So you're going to be the person that's going to have to produce what you're shooting. It's going to mean you're going to have to be the person directing what you're shooting. It's going to mean you're going to be filming what you're shooting, editing and color grading. So it's essential that when you're going into any shoot, you have a plan to factor in how you're going to approach all these different things. So this could be anything from creating a very detailed pre-production plan where you're using things such as Milanote or Notion, or something as simple as just a simple shot list or even a few bullet points around the things you want to capture that day. By having a plan, it gives me the confidence to know that all the things that I want to achieve whilst filming this particular project will get ticked off. This also involves things like trying to scout locations as well, because a key thing that I've found and including a lot of my planning and pre-production is understanding where it is that I'm going to be filming. By having an understanding of where I'm going to be filming, it will give me a better understanding of what equipment I need to bring and what limitations the location will have on what we're trying to film that particular day. So for example, if part of what I'm filming is going to involve a sit-down interview, I like to use boom mics, but there may be scenarios where the space in which you're working in won't allow you to set up a boom mic, or it could be that what you're filming doesn't give you time to set up a boom mic. Having this kind of information is key, because if I turned up on set with just the boom mic and no lavaliers, it will make capturing audio of that interview a bit harder. Also, things like knowing how many people you're going to be filming that day, because you need to have this understanding in order to create a plan to get the most out of the shoot that day. When I first started, I was just using Apple Notes just to at least create some bullet points and a shot list or a to-do list of things that I needed to shoot that day or bear in mind when I am shooting that day, just to make sure that I'm not turning up on that day without any kind of plan. Especially if you're doing paid work, having a plan will give you that confidence when you're going into that day and make you look a little bit more professional when you're in front of a client. Because if you're still trying to figure things out on the day of the shoot, it's not a good look in front of the client to still trying to be understanding how you're going to approach filming on that particular day, especially if they're paying you. Let's talk about minimal gear. Over the years, I've got to the point where I've kind of understood how my gear works, what it's best for, and what scenarios I need to use that particular gear. So whenever I'm filming something, I like to keep the gear minimal, because a lot of the time we filming on my own. I will be the only one who will be able to rig up the cameras, rig up lights, rig up audio. I don't want a situation where it's going to take up a large amount of time to set up, especially in scenarios where maybe time is limited. It's not just a case about taking as little gear as possible. It's about making sure you have the gear that is right for that shoot, right? Recently, I've been trying to ensure that gear that I use is as minimal as possible. I just released a video talking about my new minimal rig, because as a solo filmmaker, having a big rig sometimes can be a lot if you don't have any assistance. On bigger sets, you may have someone to assist you in changing lenses, rigging up follow focuses, and things like that, depending on how dynamic that shoot day might be. But as a solo filmmaker, you're not gonna have that assistance. So what I try and do is I try and keep a lightweight rig where possible. As I mentioned in the previous tip, this is where pre-production and planning will help you. So understanding the environment you're gonna be filming in and what you'll need in order to film that will help you keep your gear minimal. For example, when I'm filming profile pieces for individuals, which will be used either for a branded video or let's say some form of mini doc, I know for that lighting, it's gonna involve a bit of B-roll and a bit of an interview setup. So what I'll do in those scenarios, I will take just, let's say, my Amaran 200 DS and maybe 2 tube lights, and I might throw in the Aperture MC as well. So those are fairly small lights, the ambitful tube lights and the aperture MC, so they'll fit nicely in a bag, and that's not too much lighting. But with all those bits, I'll have a little bit of flexibility in how I can light a scene. I don't want to have gear that I won't use on that day, because once again, that's going to mean me bringing a whole load of gear that I will have to load in and load out, that I don't end up using. Over time, that takes its toll. I want to save the majority of my energy for making sure that I'm focusing on filming and directing the talent on that day adequately. Let's talk about not overshooting. Now, what I mean by this is, as you're going to be filming on your own and you're going to be editing all of this on your own in a lot of the cases. When I first started out, I used to shoot so much footage, like literally tons and tons of footage. And what would happen is, once I get to the edit, I've got literally terabytes of data that I would need to sift through in order to create the edit. Now, this sometimes in some situations can be good, but in others it can be a hindrance. Like, it can slow you down in terms of turnaround for the client. So I like to have a scenario where I'm not overshooting. There is cases where sometimes it's good to have a little bit extra, but it's finding that balance between having a little bit extra and having way too much footage to go through. This is where I like to use the pre-production and the planning and have an adequate shot list. And within that shot list, I will include extra shots, which will allow me to capture that little bit extra in case I need it. But I try and not deviate too much from my intended shot list, because what that means is, as I said once again, in the edit, you just have way too much footage to edit and go through. Let's talk about knowing what jobs to take on. This one is something that I learned over the years, because obviously, when you start out, you're just glad to be getting any kind of work, to be honest. And there are situations where you will have to take on work maybe that isn't best suited for a solo filmmaker. But let's be realistic, everyone has bills to pay, and there will be times where that will have to be the case. There will come a time when you have to understand not every job is suitable for you as a solo filmmaker. And sometimes, even though the money will be good, taking on a job that realistically cannot be done as a solo filmmaker will show both in the final result and on the day of filming. There have been situations in the past where I've taken on jobs which really and truly I should have brought in a bit of additional help in order to achieve what the client wanted, but I didn't do that, and I managed to get things done, but there were a lot of hiccups on the day of filming, and that reflected negatively on me. In the end, I was still able to produce a fairly good video. I still feel that video could have been a lot better, but I think the biggest negative impact was how I was that day on set. Even though I'd done quite a bit of planning and pre-production, given that I'd taken on a bit too much, there was a lot of downtime and waiting around time for the client. Some of the people that I was filming that day had very tight schedules, and it kind of delayed their schedules by having to wait on me to set things up, which was not a good look for me. And that meant having to shoot another day, because one of the people I was filming just couldn't wait around and so we had to rearrange another day. I eventually ended up giving the client quite a bit of a discount because of this, because it did impact their timelines. And I learned from that day, understanding what jobs to take on and what jobs to turn down. I think it's better to be honest and upfront and say, for me to film this on my own within the time frames, that's not going to be enough time. So maybe you may suggest to the client maybe that they might need to increase the budget for you to bring someone else in. If that budget isn't available, maybe then what you can do is negotiate with the client to see if you can take that project and give yourself a little bit more time in order to film that as a solo filmmaker. That way you're giving the client some options. And if those options aren't available, it's just about being honest with the client, saying, look, probably this isn't the best project for me to take on, as I don't think I'll be able to deliver what you want within those time frames on my own. And for me, in order to do that, I'll either need more time or to increase the budget. So I'll probably just have to pass on this particular job. Being positive and flexible. I think this is probably one of the biggest tips I can give anyone working as a solo filmmaker, especially once you start working in the realm of getting paid work. One thing I've learned is that a lot of the client work I get primarily because the people like working with me. Not to say that they don't appreciate your work. But in today's day and age, there are so many people that can film or have cameras, or the quality of cameras are so good now, you can create amazing work without having, you know, a real in-depth knowledge of how to film, how to light, how to direct talent. So there are other factors that will set you apart from other filmmakers, and one of those will be your attitude on set and how flexible you can be on set. There are often scenarios where you have to be flexible in terms of how you're gonna work. Even though certain things may have been agreed up front, they may change on the day when it comes to filming. And the way you approach those changes go a long way in determining whether that client will want to work with you again. Not saying that every single change that the client wants you should accommodate. You should be flexible where you can, and also your attitude on set as well. Be polite, be courteous, you know, make sure the client knows what's happening on the day of filming. I always try and have a good rapport with the individuals I'm filming. There might be scenarios where the person you're working with might have a little bit of an attitude, but how you choose to deal with that person will go a long way. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take someone being disrespectful or rude, but in certain scenarios, there are ways you can do this in a diplomatic way to let them know that, hey, this is the situation, these are the issues, this is a way we can get around this. There's been situations where I've been filming for companies and some of the people that work for those companies have been very rude or a little bit disrespectful. And there's been situations where I've had to let them know that, look, how you're treating me, I don't appreciate, but the way I did it, I didn't fly off the handle or get belligerent or rude like they were. The way I've gone about handling that has meant that other people in the company have seen that and even approached me after the shoot and said, you know what, we apologize for that individual. It wasn't right the way they spoke to you. You know, we'll have a word with them. And it's meant that I've been able to still work with that company. I've also been able to let them know the kind of environment that I want to work in as well. And I think that is key. Where you can, try and be flexible and accommodating for that client. Trust me, it goes a long way in terms of creating a long-term relationship with that client and ensuring you're getting solid and consistent work with those clients. Okay, so those were my 5 tips for solo filmmakers. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments, you know, what you thought of those tips, and put in the comments any tips you have for solo filmmakers in order for them to get the best out of both their personal and client work. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.